Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I think we have good attendance so far for who we are expecting. So I'm going to go ahead and start to be mindful of people's time. So thank you for joining us. For those of you that I don't know or may not know me, I'm Melissa Evanego. I'm the Assistant Director of Air Monitoring and Mobile Sources here at DEP. I've been working in the transportation space for over 17 years on the state's inspection and maintenance program, grant programs to incentivize on-road and off-road fleet turnover, and many of DEP's electric vehicle initiatives. The Bureau of Mobile Sources continues to focus on programs to mitigate the effects of climate change because 37% of greenhouse gases come from the transportation sector. Today, I'm excited to talk to you about a new eMobility initiative, which we hope will lead to clean transportation options that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions while providing mobility services that will benefit residents and communities. First, I want to start with going over the definition of eMobility as I've heard it defined in many ways by different organizations. So to level set, I wanted to convey what we here at DEP define eMobility. So we look at eMobility as equitable shared use mobility using electric vehicles. In other words, it's an approach to provide clean transportation to overburdened communities and to residents that may not own their own vehicles. This can be in the form of public transit, ride sharing like carpooling, car sharing, shuttle services, or bike sharing. DEP began our focus on eMobility projects in 2021 when we provided grant funding for 3 projects. With me today is Colleen Oropeza, who leads the eMobility program. Colleen has been working diligently on this program since its inception and currently is working with all 7 eMobility grantees on projects to bring clean transportation to communities throughout the state. Okay, next slide. During this 1.5-hour webinar, Colleen and I will give you an overview of this solicitation opportunity. We'll give you a high-level overview of the application and grant process, provide details on tools and resources to aid you in submitting an application, and then we will open it up for questions. Next slide. As I previously mentioned, we awarded 3 mobility projects in 2021. In the years after, we awarded 4 more projects. A description of all these projects can be found on our eMobility webpage. One project in particular, the Go Trenton project, really gets to the heart of providing clean transportation options to a community and is the type of project we're looking for during this solicitation. Next slide. In order to identify community transportation needs, we're turning to New Jersey's TMAs. We believe that you all work, with the local government and communities, and you have that knowledge of, the current transportation options in your region. And that's why we believe this is a good opportunity for us to work together. And we hope that it will be a great partnership moving forward. This funding opportunity provides up to $100,000 per project area. Each TMA can submit up to 4 project areas, but not all may be awarded funding. Next slide. This funding opportunity is only open to New Jersey TMAs. A project area that we're focused on is projects in an overburdened community. These projects can be within a census tract, a municipality, a county, etc. There are a variety of project costs that can be included in the budget for this solicitation, such as personnel and consultant costs, as well as supplies and equipment. Next slide. Okay, we're going to go over the grant and application process. Next slide. On our eMobility webpage, as well as in today's webinar appointment, you'll find the solicitation overview, which is a very thorough document that provides you with the details about this solicitation, the application, and the grant process. The proposal form can also be found online. So some of the a few key components that we're looking for when we evaluate the proposals is we'll be looking for projects that are in areas where the project area identifies a lack of transportation options right now, and that it's in a community where an e-mobility solution will benefit the community. It will be important to show that the community supports such solutions. We want to ensure that we're getting the greenhouse gas reductions from this project. So there might be many community needs, but we really want to make sure that the stakeholders in the community, are part of the process, and we want them to make sure that the solutions that are recommended are solutions that will work for them. We also want to see that the TMA has demonstrated their ability to complete similar projects, and that they have existing partnerships or planned partnerships to aid in the process. Next slide. So once the projects are awarded, the TMA will enter into a grant agreement with DEP. The TMA will be the grantee and will be responsible for ensuring that all terms of the grant agreement are met. Uh, In the proposal, the TMAs can have project partners, and that can be listed in the grant agreement. But again, the TMAs will be responsible for ensuring that the terms and conditions are met, and that the final outcome and is what we are looking for, as well as the timeline of 12 months um, is met. So in order to ensure that the projects are on track, DEP will have quarterly meetings and check-ins with the TMAs to make sure that the projects are progressing. Next slide. Yep. So because we're using state funds for this grant, we have to ensure that all the procurement meets federal and state requirements. I'm sure many of you are familiar with, you know, federal and state procurement rules. So this is probably, something that's not new to you, but when obtaining a contractor, we have to make sure that that's done in a competitive process. When making purchases, we have to ensure that there's 3 quotes that are submitted for all the equipment and supplies. But we'll provide you with additional document information and documentation on what you'll need um, to move forward. Next slide. Our grants are reimbursement based, and you can indicate if you need an advance payment. So, like I said, the grants are up to $100,000. If you need advance payment to get the project started, you can request that. We'll just need justification as to what those funds will be used for. Um, all expenses must be dated within the work period in order to be reimbursed. And we will let you know that date of the work period to ensure all incurred expenses are reimbursable. There are 3 deliverables as part of this grant. The expenditure report, so that shows us all the budgeting information, the invoices with proof of payment to ensure that we can provide payment, and then the final is the project summary report. Next slide. So the project summary report, this really gets to the heart of what the project is. So there's 4 components of this report. So the first is, what research or background information was conducted to support the specific project area that was submitted. The second is the engagement with the communities. We want to make sure, like I had mentioned, that the communities are really involved in this process. So there has to be one transportation needs, survey with the residents, and at least 2 engagement activities or surveys. The third component is what e-mobility model or solution works best in that project area. Is it ride sharing? Is it shuttle services? Um, you know, every community is going to be different. Some projects might be county based throughout a whole county. Some projects might span multiple counties or multiple municipalities. So we're looking to see what is the solution or the model that works best. or to evaluate all those different models. And then number four is what is the best solution for that specific project area. So that's a quick overview. I'm going to hand off the presentation to Colleen. She's going to go into a more detailed overview of what the tools are that we have prepared for you to aid you in this process.
Thanks, Melissa. So we have two tools to help with the solicitation and with e-mobility planning in general. The first will be the Transportation Needs Index. Thank you. So we understand TMAs are very familiar with transportation in their communities, and you may have project ideas in mind already. You may have a few areas in mind, but in case you don't know where to start or you have an idea and maybe you want to look into it more, this tool can help. So DEP and the Office of Innovation have very recently developed this. It's a data-driven analysis that highlights areas where high demographic needs intersect with limited transit access. So on this slide, you could see it's a screenshot of our homepage, which is also the top link and QR code at the right. The homepage has a brief introduction and instructions for providing feedback on the tool. And then the Explore the Index button will take you to the story map, which is the bottom link and QR code at the right. And the story map walks you through the analysis and the interactive map. And then below that button, you'll find the methodology and technical documentation that outlines how the analysis was done. So over the next few slides, I'll go through the story map, and then I'll show you the interactive map. We do recommend looking through the story map first, as it explains how to use the map. And my slides will have some modified screenshots with everything, but feel free to look through it yourself as we go with that QR code. Next slide. So the first part of the analysis looks at population groups that often lack adequate transportation. So mainly it brings together population with disabilities, senior and youth population, households without vehicles, and poverty level, as well as population density to create the composite needs score. And this includes areas with a larger number of these populations were given a higher score. So in the map here, you could see the darker blue areas have a higher composite needs score than the lighter beige areas. Next slide. The second part of the analysis looks at access to transit. It considers the percentage of census block groups that are within a half mile of a train station or a quarter mile of a bus stop to create an access score. So in the map, based on these factors, you could see the darker blue areas have a higher access score or more access to transit compared to the lighter beige areas. And the areas of the map that don't have any color are not near NJ Transit. I will note that this version of the toolkit only considers distance to New Jersey Transit. For future versions, we're hoping to add additional modes of transportation and also consider more than just distance. So things like frequency of transit, walkability, access to jobs and opportunities, and things like that. Next slide. So for the next part of the index, each of those two scores was split into thirds. So for the composite needs score, we have high needs, medium needs, and low needs. And then for the access score, we have high access, medium access, and low access. And these two things were overlaid to create categories. So in the map, you could see we're considering these four categories as having the highest priority. So areas with low access and high demographic needs, low access and medium access and high needs, and medium access and medium needs. Next slide. The fourth part of the index overlays those four priority categories with New Jersey's overburdened communities. So you could see which areas are classified as an OBC and may have a higher need for transportation with lower access. New Jersey classifies overburdened communities as census block groups where at least 35% are low-income households, 40% identify as minority or members of a tribal community, or at least 40% of households have limited English proficiency. Next slide. So all of these primary maps are included in the story map. And all of the layers for the maps, as well as the layers for the individual population groups and NJ transit layers that were used to calculate the scores, are all included in the interactive map. The link for this is at the end of the story map in the Explore the Tool section. And here you'll be able to zoom in and out, find an address, toggle layers on and off. You know, it's a typical GIS platform that you can look around in. So next slide. So if you click on that link, it'll bring you to this. And you could see the layer groups are on the left side and the legend will be on the right, depending on which layers you have toggled on. So the top layer group there corresponds with part 1 of our story map. So transportation needs based on demographics. You could see the composite needs score there, which is toggled on right now. And then you could see the individual 5 categories that were considered for that score. Next slide. The next layer group corresponds with part 2 of the story map that looks at access to transportation based on distance to transit. So it includes the access score at the top, as well as the 4 different New Jersey transit layers that were considered for that score. Next slide. And next you'll see the priority communities layer group. And here, in addition to the 4 priority categories that we looked at in the story map, we've also included the needs and access categories for the entire state. So in case you have an area that's maybe not in those priority communities, you could see how it was ranked with the combined information there. Next slide. And finally, the last layer group, besides just the geographic boundaries, is the overburdened communities layer. So you could see the priority OBCs are those 4 priority categories that intersect with an OBC in part 4 of the story map. We've also included a layer for all of New Jersey's overburdened communities here, and that's the layer that's toggled on right now. So for this solicitation, you don't need to choose a priority community as your project area, but it does have to be an overburdened community. So that's why we included that layer here. And the darker areas on this screen are overburdened communities that are also adversely impacted by environmental and public health stressors. Both the darker bluish purple and the lighter blue colors are eligible locations for this solicitation. And next slide, thank you. So the next tool we have is the eMobility Planning Toolkit. You can go to the next slide. So this provides an outline for completing those project summary reports that will be required for the grant. The top link and QR code at the right will bring you to our toolkit homepage. And the bottom link will take you to the solicitation overview document, which has more guidance on how to complete the project summary reports using the toolkit. There's also a project summary report template in attachment A that corresponds very closely with the toolkit. And that's what I'm going to go over now. So the toolkit you'll see is broken down into 3 very comprehensive steps. Each section has its own resources, examples, tools, links, and I'll give an overview of each of these. Next slide. Step 1 of the toolkit corresponds with part 1 of the summary report template, which is creating a baseline. So you'll see here is where you're going to identify the project area, summarize demographic data, and evaluate the existence and conditions of transportation options in the community. Really all of the background research of the project area. A lot of this information you may have on hand already, or I'm sure you have ample experience with, but in case you need some more information, there are lots of links here that can help. And this is also where the transportation needs index could come in handy because it includes all that demographic data and the transit layers in one place for you. Next slide. So step 2 covers community engagement, which is the second part of the report template. We know TMAs are not strangers to engagement, but there are some resources and examples here if needed. For these grants, as Melissa mentioned, we ask you to complete at least 1 transportation needs and preferences survey and at least 2 engagement events or activities. There's not a specific template for the survey. or specific events that have to be done. We wanted to give you some flexibility to tailor your questions and your events depending on, how the community is going to respond. Um, and there's examples of engagement events and survey templates here. Um, they include things like public events, listening sessions, focus group discussions, mobility demonstrations. And then I believe there's 3 survey samples that are there for you. But again, you can tailor the questions to the community. And next slide. So step 3 of the toolkit combines parts 3 and 4 of the summary template, developing solutions and providing a final recommendation. So here you'll put together what you've gathered in steps 1 and 2 to come up with possible transportation solutions that could work for the community. At least one of these for the solicitation must be an eMobility model. You can look at all eMobility models, but we require at least one. And then we ask you to complete additional engagement focused on these solutions, and that can be either another survey or another event. And then you'll make a final recommendation for the best solution, considering things like how well it addresses the community's needs and preferences, the risks, the benefits, the funding required, the time it would take to implement, and things like that. Next slide. And that's it. So there were links throughout this whole slide deck, but I also put them all here so you're not searching around to find them. The top link is our solicitation homepage, which keeps all information related to this TMA solicitation. And we're also going to be posting a questions and answers document. So any questions that you ask during the webinar, any questions that we get by email, we're going to put all those together in one place and post it to the website. We're planning to update it weekly. And then here you'll also see links for the solicitation overview document, the online proposal form, and a list of proposal questions. So the online proposal form that you have to complete to apply is a online Microsoft form, and it has different sections, and you kind of have to click next to get through it. So you can't see all the questions until you answer the previous questions. So to help you all out, we have a PDF of all the questions so you could prepare for submitting that online form. And then there's links for the 2 tools that I went over, the needs index and the toolkit. And I think the next slide is the question slide. Great. So Monica, I know we kind of went over a ton of information in a short amount of time. I don't know if there's any questions in the chat or if anybody wants to ask any questions now.
I don't see any questions in the chat, but if anybody has any questions, please use the raised hand function and we will call your name. So if you have a question, you can either put it in the chat or raise your hand.
I see a question.
Yep, Miss Lisa Lee, you can unmute and ask your question.
Thank you. So my question is, I know you had mentioned the eMobility, and you said that the options could also involve like e-shuttles, electric vehicle share, as well as micromobility. Is that correct? I just want to confirm that any type of eMobility is included for this project.
Right. So for the needs assessment part of it, you can consider any of those options. For our eMobility grant program that funds implementation projects, we haven't funded micromobility in the past, but it doesn't mean, we won't. But yes, for this, you can consider any type of eMobility.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Jeff Perlman, you can unmute and ask your question.
Well, more of a sort of a comment. Really, what I would say add is in terms of projects that if a TMA identifies a need, identifies a series of one or more projects for a particular municipality or community, and perhaps you can't fund it, DEP can't fund it. If it's eligible for federal funding, you could. That's, in other words, you're doing the study, and if there's a project that can't get funded through DEP, but they can get funded through another source, like TPAs programs, you could, don't drop it because maybe DEP can't fund it. There's other funding sources. So be maybe more funding agnostic about, you know, the the need, the appropriate solution based on the need.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. And I'll add in the toolkit, and as part of, I think it's either part 3 or 4 of the report template that you have to complete, we do ask you to look through potential funding solutions, which may not just be our eMobility grant program. Maybe your solution is improving walkability in the neighborhood so people can get the transit better. That's not something eMobility would fund, but I'm sure there's plenty of federal funding through the MPOs that could be used. So in our eMobility planning toolkit, we do try to keep an updated list of the available funding opportunities that are out there that you can look into.
And I would say NJTPA would recognize the planning outcomes of these studies as points, probably prioritize these kinds of projects coming out of a planning study than not. So this is really good work to undertake.
Thanks, Jeff. I also just want to stress that, this is funds for a planning grant and not for a specific, these funds will not be for a project, to kick off until after the 1 year. So this is 1 year to look at the planning process to ensure that the project area has a successful framework. So the transportation surveys done, meeting with the community, and looking at a project from different directions with those e-mobility models being evaluated. After the 1 year, we hope that the project areas can turn into a project. And then that's the time that we would be looking at funding and seeing what projects can move forward.
Okay, so we have a question in the chat from Chris from Easy Ride. He is looking at the map and he puts the link. Are there different layers you discussed available to the public?
Let me see. I'm going to click his link. Oh, it's the interactive map.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Oh, so if you click on, I see when you click on this map, it doesn't bring up those different layer groups that I had went over. So if you click on the right side, there's a layer icon, and that should bring up all of the different layer groups. Can I share my screen, Monica, just so I can show people?
I just stopped sharing. You should
Oh,
have
thank you.
access now.
So when you click on the link that Chris shared, it brings up this. So I didn't realize it didn't automatically bring up the layer groups that I had gone over. But if you click on the right here, there's a layer icon, and that brings up the different, all those different layer groups that I had gone over. Does that answer your question, Chris? Is that helpful? I think everything should be viewable here. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now.
Okay, we have a question from David Heller. He can unmute and ask his question.
Yeah, just real quick. So can entities other than TMAs apply, or is it primarily just for TMAs, this program?
For this funding opportunity, it's just TMAs. We really want to test out our transportation needs index and our e-mobility planning toolkit and see, how these things are actually used. But we hope in the future to open it up to more organizations. Do you know people in particular who are interested, or is it the MPOs that are interested?
I mean, we might be interested, not we as SJTPO. I'm not saying we would, like, if it was eligible for MPOs, we would submit an application. I mean, that's a bigger question, and have to go through a lot of channels for that.
Mhm.
But it would be good to know, if this is a grant application that MPOs are eligible to apply for, or even a municipality, because
Mhm.
we're always looking for obviously grant opportunities, if not for ourselves, for our subregions. So that's where I was coming from.
Yeah, so this one, like I said, it's just the TMAs that can be the grant recipients, but we do encourage the TMAs to work with local municipalities. So maybe that's the angle you could take with promoting the opportunity.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, Amy has a question. She can unmute and ask your question.
Hi, I just wanted to understand a little bit more what you said about in the future for the grant program. So do you always see it being kind of a planning grant program, or were you referring to it could potentially be an implementation grant program in the future, or that's something that you might look into?
So right now, we actually do have our eMobility grant program, which is an implementation program. So that's available for anybody to apply at any time. We accept proposals on a rolling basis. And if we do see a proposal come in and we have funding available, we can fund that. This specific solicitation that has the open and close dates is just for planning. Does that help?
Yeah, if you could put the other one in the chat, that would be helpful because I'm going to
Yeah.
send kind of an email out to my office to tell them about this program, and then having the link to the rolling program with it would be really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Sure.
I don't see any other questions at this time. No raised hands and nothing in the chat so far. Oh, wait, yep. Do you anticipate additional rounds of planning grant funding for OBCs that are not selected this year, or is this a single year effort?
I think that's a question for Melissa. So I'm going to have her take that on.
Yeah, I think that there could be opportunities. Like Colleen had said previously, we want people to use the toolkit and to use the needs index. Um, you know, we're hoping they're really helpful to everybody as you go through this process. Um, and, you know, I think it really depends on how many project areas are submitted this round, and then if we need to make any adjustments to the program to be able to get really good projects that are holistic when looking at a community. I think that there could be opportunities for additional solicitations. So we will be putting a recording of this webinar up on the website for anybody who was not able to join. All the documents are online, and we will be uploading Q&As as we go through, the next couple of weeks. So if you have questions, send them in, and then we'll post the answers to them on the webpage. Any other questions? I'm sure as you go through the documents in the solicitation overview, um, you might have some other questions unless we were that thorough. Yeah, feel free to reach out to us, ask questions. We're really interested in, seeing what kind of ideas all of you have. And I think, the options and the different models for North Jersey versus South Jersey could be very different. Okay, so
I have one more. I'm sorry, I have
Mhm.
one more question. I was just trying to review all of the slides where I took notes too. So I understand that this is a planning grant and it's due April 25th, and you want us to do some of the engagement within the next month, right? To include. What I'm a little bit confused about is that you're also, oh, I see, never mind. Okay, so the process after the award with the procurement, that would only be afterwards. So we don't have to worry about any of the sections that you talked about with the quotes and everything until after, if awarded. So right
Right.
now, our focus
Correct.
would be on the engagement with different communities, gathering all of the demographic information and putting together proposals. Okay,
Right.
sorry,
And
I answered my own question.
no, that's good. It's good to talk it out. And then even as part of the grant after award, you could do a deeper dive into the demographic info, and that's when you'll really do the engagement. So I would say when you're applying, maybe you want to engage with some municipalities to see who would be interested. But you don't have to do any of those engagement activities or surveys before you submit the proposal. That would be after you're awarded.
Okay, all right, I guess that wasn't clear. Okay, so right now we're just considering and reaching out to partners. No engagement required now beforehand in this process. Okay,
Right.
I think
thank
what
you.
will help us with the selection of project areas is knowing if there's been, any kind of engagement previously. Have you met with municipalities, or has a community, shown interest in or identified that there are some gaps, transportation gaps in their communities? That will help us identify whether, you know, um, there's a good path forward.
Is there any kind of sample um, document out there, like proposal, that is part of the solicitation information that we could look at
I don't have like
or
a
could be shared?
filled out proposal, like a proposal with
Yeah,
answers already. I don't have that. I just
yeah,
have the proposal questions.
like maybe one that
Let's
you've
see.
already granted or something in the past.
No, this is the first
No.
of its kind from us. So I have
Okay.
no examples. You will be our examples for the future.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Right. And I don't know, Melissa, if you mentioned this, I was typing in the chat, but we'll also be sharing out the slides with all the links so that you have them as well.
Well, thank you everybody for attending. You know, Hopefully this is something that you're interested in, and getting the funding will really be able to help you flesh out some details of projects that maybe you were thinking about, but you either didn't have time or you didn't have the funding for. I think our goals are the same: to move forward in finding these clean transportation options. And it's you know, I think you are all better suited than we are at the state, because you know the specifics in your areas. So really hoping for to see what everybody comes up with. Like I said, we have ideas, but uh, you know better, and as you're working in this space all the time. So any parting comments, Jeff? Yep.
Yeah, thank you. I would just say this sounds like this is a great program, and and we've via TPA have had conversations with DEP, so we know about this program. And again, if there's our resources are professional resources are available to help you as well. This is DEP's program, but we certainly are here still. If you need some help with, reviewing the data or, developing recommendations, obviously maybe that's DEP's call, but I'm just saying that we're still here at TPA staff to help the TMAs if you want.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay.
Yeah, I use all the resources. Use NJTPA. We'll try to help too, but yeah, like Melissa said, we know you all work in this space more than us and are more, on the ground in your community. So we're really relying on you guys to let us know everything.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining us. We'll give you back 45 minutes of your time, and feel free to reach out with any questions that you have.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.